Good morning everyone, how's it going today? In today's video I'm going to show you how to create an MCP client graphical user interface that looks precisely like this. So I'm going to ask it, how do I integrate Llama Index with ChromaDB? This one has access to a tool called Get Documentation, which is exposed to it via an MCP server, and it's going to call the MCP server, get the response, and display everything to me in just a moment. So there you go, we have the response, and this is what you can expect. As you can see, we have the user message, which is the query that I sent right here. After that, we have that the assistant decided to call a tool. So we have a message of call of type tool use, and the input, which is exactly what parameters it sent. And then we have right here a tool result, which is the actual result from our MCP tool. And then naturally we have the actual response from our assistant after having used my MCP tools right here. And just a very quick note on the fact that in this video we're going to be plugging this front end to a FastAPI application that we coded in the previous video that was up a few days ago. And that API, that FastAPI actually looks like this. So it is an API that exposes an endpoint on their query right here, and it takes one parameter, which is query, where you send your query right here, and it returns a bunch of messages. The first one is your own message, then it returns the assistant's tool call, tool use right here, then it returns the actual response from the tool use that you did using the MCP server, and then by the end it returns the assistant right here. So in this video we're going to be plugging a very nice front end that we're going to build with very few lines of Python code with this FastAPI application that you should already have, or a similar one that you may already have on your own. If you do not have that application, I recommend that you go to that other video to complete that FastAPI app first, and then come right here to actually build the front end that looks like this. Okay, so let's get right into it. All right, so what we're going to be doing right here is very straightforward. We're going to be creating a front directory right here beside our API, and I'm going to initialize a main entry point in Python. It's very straightforward, and in this one, what I'm going to need to install Streamlit, right? So I'm going to use Streamlit. There we go, super quick. And there we go. Now after that, I'm going to be able to just import it like this. So this is what I'm going to be using. This, I'm not going to be using it yet. So I'm going to be using async.io. I'm going to be using a quick logger that I'm going to actually just copy from here, from my API. So I'm going to paste it right here. If you might remember from the API video, the logger that I use right here is essentially just a very quick logger that I vibe coded that essentially just has two debugging levels, one for info and one for debug. Info is logged in the terminal and debug is logged into a file that will be right here. Very quick, very straightforward. And after that, I'm going to be importing Streamlit as ST, and we're going to be using async.io. So I'm going to initialize my main function right here, and then we're going to just run it when we actually execute the whole thing. And we're going to be using three different three different state variables. If you remember correctly about how Streamlit works, in Streamlit you have session state variables, which essentially remain the same throughout the entire lifecycle of Streamlit, because remember that Streamlit essentially reruns your code every single time that anything happens in your application. So the variables that are stored in this session state variables are going to remain the same. So I have a Boolean value right here for server connected. If my MCP server is connected, I have my tools array right here, which is going to just save the information about the tools that I have in my MCP servers, and the messages, which is essentially going to be just the history of the messages with my assistant right here. Okay. After that, I'm going to just initialize a very quick API URL variable right here, which is going to be always the same one, which is going to be just the API that I coded before, which is in localhost, if I remember correctly. If it's in, yeah, there you go, it's in port 8000, if I remember that correctly. And then just as you usually do, you initialize, when you initialize a Streamlit application, you set up the set page config, so you can set the title using page title and an icon. I don't remember why it was a shark here, but why not? And after that, there you go. After that, we're going to initialize our chatbot like this. So we're going to go create the chatbot. Chatbot is going to equal my chatbot. That is going to take the API URL. And there we go. Then all we're going to do is called chatbot.render to actually render the entire application. Okay. So there you go. That is our main entry point, but we're going to have to actually create the chatbot class, and it's very straightforward. And it will have naturally a render method right here. Okay, so let's create that right here. So we're going to do chatbot.py, and that's where we're going to create the chatbot, and that's how we're importing it right here. Just rename this right here, chatbot.py. Right. So let's start with the chatbot. All right, so in order to start with our chatbots, very straightforward. All we're going to have to do at start is we're going to import Streamlit as ST and httpx for my calls to the API that I just did. And there we go. So we're going to initialize our chatbot class like this. And in the constructor, we have two main properties. So the first one is the API URL. I mean, you can choose to just define it, hard code it in here. I decided to inject it as a dependency from here, but that's all right. It's okay. And then this one's very important. That is going to be the list of messages that are going to be shown in the UI. Okay. So these are the history of messages that your conversation is going to have. And as you can see, I am calling them straight from the session state that you see right here. That's how it works in Streamlit, and it makes everything easier, but you do have to learn how to work with session state. That being said, if you're not familiar enough with Streamlit, I do have a very complete crash course on Streamlit that you can check out in the description. It's actually one module of a complete bootcamp that I have on creating AI applications for production environments. So, but that one in particular is free, so you can open it and get a taste of what the bootcamp is all about. And I mean, the Streamlit part is completely free, so go for it. After this, we're going to be having the render method. As you can see right here, we're calling the render method, and very straightforward. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to define an render method, and this method, what it's going to do is it is going to, there we go, it's going to make it async. And this method is going to load the components that we're going to be showing in our UI, right? If you remember correctly, the UI looks basically like this. So you have the title right here, and that's the title that we're going to be putting first. So the title is going to be like this, st.title. After this, we're going to be doing with sidebar. In order to actually add a sidebar like the one that you see right here, we're going to be adding settings and the tools. So first, let's add the settings. Very straightforward. For the settings, we're going to be just adding it like this. There we go. There we go. Subheader for settings, and then the API URL that we imported right here. And then after that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be calling the endpoint that we created in the previous video in the API, right? So remember that the API right here, I have it right here inside of the API main. Remember that right here I have a tools endpoint, which essentially just calls the get MCP tools method from my MCP server. And it's very straightforward. All that it does is that it returns all of my tools available in my server. So there you go. And I'm going to tap into this thing right here. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to first initialize a method called getTools. So I'm going to do here getTools like this. And there we go. So we're going to be initializing a call to my async client like this. So with httpx async client as client, we're going to await from my client, we're going to get, and right here, let's call to my API URL, and we're going to call into tools right here, okay? And basically, we're just going to return the response in JSON like that. So this should do. And now we're going to call that from here. So we're going to say the result is going to be await self.get tools. And the result, we're going to display it under the subheader tools as we saw right here. Okay. So let's actually do that. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to do st.subheader, going to tap tools, and we're going to write st write, and we're going to write every single tool name like this for tool in result tools. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. And then we're going to save this, and this should already create the sidebar with all of my tools, and this call should be working correctly. So let's actually take a look at that. Going to open this right here. Going to go into my front folder right here. Remember that my API is running currently. So I am going to tap into this pod right here. So let's actually do, in order to run the Streamlit application, I'm going to have to do Streamlit run main, which is the name of my file. Hit enter, and oh, for some reason I don't have my source environment activated. So there you go. So now I should be able to execute this thing right here. I think I made a very quick mistake. It's not with st sidebar, not with sidebar. There you go. So now I should be able to go to this browser right here, and let's just enter this right here. And there you go. As you can see, we have my settings sidebar, I have my title, I have my sidebar with the client tools right here. And if you want to check the actual logs from the API, you can see that it called the tools endpoint. So there you go. Now we can go to the next part, which is the more exciting part, which is the actual interactive chat. All right, so now that we're right here, we can initialize a next part right here. I'm going to keep everything inside of the render method right here to make it easier, but feel free to modularize it, this into different methods. So right here, I'm going to be initializing my query input right here. So in Streamlit, you have this st.chat input element that allows you to initialize a chat input. And after that, we're going to test if the user actually sent something by doing if query like this. And if there is a query, the first thing that we're going to be doing is, why not, let's just log it in the message UI, doing st chat message. This is just going to show it in the UI. And after that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to initialize an async client with our httpx client like this as client. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sending that query to our API. Okay, that's very straightforward. Remember that our API receives a query like this that takes one parameter, which is query. Okay, I mean, this is the name of the endpoint, and the parameter itself is also named query, as you see right here. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to come right here. And inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to first initialize the response, which is going to be an await call to the client, which is going to be post call. and we're going to send it to our API URL/query, which is the endpoint that we just saw. And the body of it is going to be a JSON object with the only parameter called query, like this. Okay. And there you go. After that, what we are going to do is we are going to say that if the response is correct, so if we got a 200 as a response from our FastAPI application, what we're going to do is we're going to get the messages from there. So remember that our messages right here, the object returned from our API call, if you remember correctly, from our HTTP client right here is a messages object, right? So, I mean, it's an object with one element called messages, and this is the one that we're going to be trying to get. So in order to get it, all that we have to do is we're going to go right here, and the messages, we're going to set them to the response.json, and we're going to tap into the messages pod right here. Okay. Now, after that, what we can do is we update the session state of messages, and we set it to these new messages that we have right here. Okay. And there you go. After that, all that we have to do is show or display the messages that we are going to be sending. And in order to do that, all that we're going to have to do is to show the messages, every single one of these messages in our UI. And in order to do that, it's also very straightforward. All you're going to have to do is for message in messages. You could do it like this. So let me show you what this actually returns. So for st_chat message role, we're going to write it. Remember that st.message, message, what it does is that first of all, it takes the type of message and then the content of the message itself. This will work, but let me just show you how it actually works. Just as a recap. We sent the request to our query endpoint. We verified that the request was correct. And then we tapped into the messages object inside the response. And we set our internal history of our application, of the UI messages, to messages like this, the ones that we got from our API, okay? So essentially, we were setting those to these ones right here. And after that, we're showing them in the application using st_chat message. I think our main message is going to be duplicated because if you remember correctly, in the first one, we already returned our own message. So there you go. This should work correctly. So let's take a look at it. So if I go back to my browser right here and I reload, as you can see, I have my input right here, which is the st_chat input, and I can say hello, and let's see what my assistant is going to return to me. So hello, how can I assist you today? I'm here to help you with any questions, etc. So far so good. Okay. Now we want to test how would this work if it could actually call an MCP tool, right? So let's just restart this and let's ask a new question. Let's say, how do I integrate llama index with Chroma? This time let's do it with MCP. And let's send that. And it's going to start thinking. I'm actually going to show you what is actually happening in the terminal. Oh, seems like we had a mistake. Oh, we had a timeout. Let's actually set the timeout to something a little bit less restrictive. So let's set the timeout to 60 seconds. And there we go. So this should already make it work a little bit better. So I'm going to reload this. So let's reload it like this, and let's ask, how do I integrate llama index with Chroma? No, with MCP. It's going to start thinking, and let's actually now take a look at our terminal right here. So as you can see, the API is already trying to figure out what the returned value from the language, from the MCP call was. So as you can see here, we have the actual documentation. And here we have some errors. Let's see, are we having any errors? It's still thinking. All right, it usually takes a little bit of time because there we go. So as you can see, this was a lot. So first, what happened is that we got as returned the first message, which is let me search the data dilemma index documentation to find information about integrating MCP. So that is its thought process. And here you have the actual tool call, which is call llama index. It got it wrong. It thought that MCP means Microsoft Cloud Platform. Not a big problem, but I mean, it's nice to be able to actually see that your language model did not mess up your call by actually logging in the terminal, I mean, in your UI, the actual arguments that were sent to your application. All right, so now something that I wanted to show you real quick. It's a quick little piece of advice so that you can handle these messages a little bit more efficiently. And right here, as you can see, we're just basically just showing everything that our API returns to us, which is a lot, but you probably want to be able to handle them differently. So what I would recommend is that in your client, you handle different types of messages independently. And there are mainly 4 types of messages that you are going to be the most concerned with. The first one is the user message, so like this one. The other one is the AI message, like the response. And then another one is the tool use, so the tool call from a language model, and then the tool response, okay? So those are the 4 messages that I would want you to handle separately. And in order to do that, all you're going to have to do is come right here. And I'm actually going to, instead of just showing every single message like this, I'm going to be using a function called display message, and for each message I'm going to log it using that display. So I'm going to save it like this, and the display message, I'm going to create the function right here. So I'm going to call it display message, and the message is going to be like this. So for now, here it's going to be, it currently does nothing. And there we go. So I'm going to click save, and as you can see, everything's gone because it currently does nothing. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to handle the 4 different types of messages. First one is the user message. Then it is the tool call message or the tool use message. Then we're going to be handle the tool result message, and finally the AI message, right? Now, how do we test them? The first one is very straightforward. The language model, when it returns a user, when you send a user message, it's very straightforward. It essentially just have to test that the message role is user, and that the type of the message content is a string, right? And all you're gonna do is just display it like that. So there you go. Then, I mean, the reason why I tested it as a string is because remember when we checked right here on messages, when the user, when you send a message to the language model, it counts as a content. The content is a string, but when you send a response from a tool call, it also comes with role of a user. But as you can see, in this case, the content is actually an array. So this one we're going to be handling differently under the tool response. And in order to do that, we're going to go back right here, and let's actually check out the tool use. The tool use is this one right here. So it is on role assistant, and the content is a list. So in order to do that, we're just going to come right here under tool use, and we're going to say that if the message role is an assistant and the type is a list, we're going to say that for each item in the message content, we're going to say that if the item is a tool use, we're going to be just displaying it inside an stMessage, and we're going to be using the JSON method of stMessage the JSON message, JSON method of st in order to write right here. And this one's very straightforward. It takes we're going to type in the tool and the input. So the input's going to be input like this. And this one actually takes name. Just to be clear, what's going on right here? We tested that the role is assistant and then the content is a list, like you see right here. So the role is assistant and the content is a list. And remember that we had two different messages whenever an assistant makes a tool call. So the first one is its reasoning. So I'm doing something like, let me search the documentation for information, blah, blah, blah. And the second one is the actual tool call, right? In this case, I'm only going to be showing the tool call. I don't really want to show this one, but you can do that too, right? So in order to pinpoint this one, I'm going to have to target the one of type tool use, which is what I did right here. And then I just logged whatever is inside of it, which is the tool item, the tool name right here, and also the input, which is the actual parameters that were sent to the function. So there you go. Now if I click save like this right here, and I go to my element right here, I'm actually not saying anything because I'm not displaying my messages before anything happens. So currently my display messages is only happening while I am inside of the query conditional right here. So only if the user actually sends something. But if I want to display it right here, I can do it like this. And there you go. So you have my user question and the tool call. Now, next, we're going to test, we're going to pinpoint the tool result. And the tool result usually looks something like this one right here. So the role is going to be a user and the content is going to be the actual content of the whole thing right here. So let's just send it like that, like this right here. So if the message is an assistant, nope, if the message is a user and the type is a list, right here, we're just going to log everything actually. Yeah, I think it's just easier. And tool response. So yeah, I guess we can just st.chat message. And this one's going to be, let's call it an assistant message, even though it technically actually is a message from the user, but I'm going to be showing it as an assistant right here just for user experience. And let's just type the whole thing like this. If I remember correctly, it's tool result. I can actually type into the content object right here. It's probably easier. Yeah, let's go. Let's just go like that. Should be good enough. There you go. And now if I open that up right here, you can see that my result is here. Now something useful about using JSON, the JSON component right here, is that you can actually call the expanded equal false, so that whenever it is shown, everything is going to be shown like this. And that's quite convenient if you want to do this, because sometimes the responses are super long. There we go. And then last but not least, the AI message is very straightforward as well. All you gotta do is that the message role is assistant and that it is a string. And then all you gotta do is just do that like that. And there we go. So now how do I integrate Llama Index with MCP? Here you have the tool call and the result. And there you go. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. It was very quick, show you how to create a graphical user interface for your MCP client. Don't forget to check out the Streamlit crash course that I'm linking right there in the AI Engineering Bootcamp. And also feel free to take a look at the previous video on how to create a FastAPI application for MCP clients. Really, MCP, FastAPI application for MCP app clients. So great to see you, and have a good one. I'll see you next time.